Hello everyone, and welcome back. So, Tarkov is recently wiped. We're now at patch 0.15, and we've gotten a new handgun to play with, the Desert Eagle. The Desert Eagle has a few variants in Tarkov, mainly 4 different ones, one of them chambered in 357, and the other 3 all chambered in 50 AE. So, today I'll be showing you the differences between them, as well as going over the ammos that they use. Starting off with the first one, the L5 variant, chambered in 357 Magnum. When we look at the gun in the presets menu, we can see that it's just over 1.5 kgs in weight. As a no-go 74, it's not very accurate with an MOA of 8.94 and a very high vertical and horizontal recoil and a relatively low muzzle velocity. When we look at how we can modify the weapon, we find that we can't really change the barrel or the magazine, but we can fit a different grip, namely a rubber grip with hand grooves that adds to ergo, but we cannot change the slide, the rear sight or the front sight. We can, however, fit a variety of different sights on the top, with the only exception of being the HDO, for which we need to remove the front sight. But what's pretty crazy is that you can actually fit a Reap IR on the Desert Eagle. Pretty silly, but I think definitely it will be fun. So, before we get into the 50 AE variants, I just want a quick rundown of the 357 Magnum ammos that we find, with the lowest pen one being the Magnum SP. It has 108 damage with a bullet velocity of 455 meters per second, a accuracy buff of 27%, a recoil debuff of -29, it has a 20% chance of causing heavy bleed, 35% of causing a light bleed, but only a pen of 12. Since it only has a penetration of 12 though, I would say this ammo is pretty useless against armored targets, so it's probably only good against scavs that are not wearing armor, or if you're planning on only hitting headshots. The next ammo in the 357 caliber is the Magnum HP. It also has a very high damage of 99, with a slightly higher bullet velocity of 481 meters per second, but it has a much higher recoil buff, plus 15. The chance to cause a heavy bleed is a bit higher, as well as the chance to cause a light bleed, and we get a higher penetration, with the pen sitting at 18, meaning that we will be able to penetrate level 1 armors and almost fully penetrate a level 2 armor. That being said, the majority of players will not be running level 1 or level 2 armors, so again this round would be pretty useless against level 3 or level 4 armors, unless you're planning on only hitting headshots. If I were to choose though, between these 2 rounds, I would rather choose to have the Magnum HP, due to the higher pen, and the higher chance of causing heavy bleed and a light bleed. Next up is the Magnum JHP, still with a relatively high damage of 88, a lower bullet velocity of 425 meters per second, but it has the same accuracy buff as Magnum HP, with a lower recoil of only +8. Unfortunately though, it does trade that off a bit, by giving you a smaller chance to cause a heavy bleed and a light bleed. But the gain again is that you have a higher penetration at 24, meaning that you'll be able to penetrate level 1 and level 2 armors and level 3 armors after a few shots. Similarly as before though, I will say if you do have the option of using JHP versus HP, I would rather choose JHP, having a higher penetration. Our fourth and final type of round in 357 is the Magnum FMJ. This one has a damage of 70, which is much lower than the very first cartridge we spoke about, which was Magnum SP with a damage of 108. Magnum FMJ also has a lower bullet velocity, not have any buff to the accuracy. It also has a higher recoil than the JHP, and extra chance of causing a light bleed and a lower chance of causing a heavy bleed. But it trades all of that for a higher penetration, which means that you'll be able to easily penetrate level 1 to 3 armors, as well as penetrating level 4 armor after a few shots. Now for the 50 AE Desert Eagles. The first variant we find is also the L5, but this one obviously is chambered in AE50. AE meaning Action Express. It's very similar in appearance to the 357 variant, with no real difference at all. Again, like before, you cannot change the front or the rear sight, you cannot change the slide, you can only change the grip, and you cannot change your magazine. With the 357 though, you have a 9-round magazine, but with all of the 50 AE pistols, you only have a 7-round magazine. Again, just like the 357 variant, you have options of a few different sights, with the only exception being the HCO, which you will have to remove the front sight for. Other than that, you can go crazy with this one and also add a rebuy R if you really wanted to. Now, for the big difference between these two, which will be most noticeable, is the sound. When I shot the first one, it was in the 357 caliber, but now you will hear it in the 50 AE, and it is much louder. I also want to show you guys how much recoil the 50 AE has when firing it as fast as I can. Yes, it's quite a lot, and to be honest, it's not really that controllable. You will end up missing most of your shots doing this. So our next variant is the L6 WTS variant, which features a very prominent zebra pattern across the gun as well as a bottom mounted rail. And it is for this reason that it is personally my favorite Desert Eagle. On the top rail, we have a wider selection of different sights we can mount, as well as the HCO, which for, again, we need to remove the front sight. On the bottom rail, we can mount tactical devices such as lasers and flashlights. And with the slide, we can change it to the Mark 19 variant or the regular L6 variant. The same goes for the barrel. The only real differences between the different slides and barrels is the color. Just like with the previous variants, we cannot change the magazine size and we only have one other option for the grip. As far as the sound and the feel of the gun goes, it's very similar to the regular LS5. And now for our final variant, the Mark 19. The Mark 19 is closer to the LS5 in that it does not have a bottom rail for any tactical devices. You do, however, still have the wide variety of choices in terms of sights, and you can actually change the slide and the barrel to the other two variants, which is the WTS variants or the LS5 variants. But just as before, you only have one other option for the grip and you cannot do anything else to the magazine. Now for the ammo. The first one we're going to be looking at is the JHP variant, which does 147 damage with a bullet velocity of 440 meters per second. It has an accuracy debuff of -10%, and a recoil buff of +5, but it has a very high chance of causing heavy bleeding at 40% and a good chance of causing light bleed at 35%. The only problem with it being that it only has a penetration of 12, meaning you will be able to penetrate level 1 armors and level 2 armors after quite a few shots. For that reason, this ammo is pretty good for headshots or leg shots, but not much else. Our next variant is the Hawk JSP. Similar to the regular JHP, it also has a very high damage at 122, with a bullet velocity of 465. It is slightly more accurate, but still suffers from a debuff of -5%, and it still has an increased recoil, but only +2. It still has a relatively good chance of causing heavy bleed at 30% and a good chance of causing a light bleed at 25%, but it has more than double the penetration of regular JHP at 26. Meaning that you'll be able to penetrate level 1 and level 2 armors, and after a few shots you'll be able to penetrate level 3 armors as well. If you have the option between these two, I would suggest using the Hawk JSP. And now for our next round, the Copper Solid. The Copper Solid loses quite a bit of damage, now sitting at 94. It has a slightly lower bullet velocity of 460 meters per second, but it actually has an accuracy debuff, being that it is a Copper Solid, but it gains more recoil with a +8. It also loses the increased chance of causing a light bleed and has a reduction in the chance of causing heavy bleed, sitting only at 10%. But it trades all of this off for having a penetration of 33, meaning that you'll be easily able to penetrate level 1, 2 and 3 armors, although it will take quite a few shots to penetrate level 4 armor. At this point, if you're hunting scavs or unarmored players, for example, in the start of wipe, I would use Hawk JSP. If you're possibly going to be running into more armored targets, I would definitely choose the Copper Slug. Now for our final variant of 50 AE, the FMJ variant. Again, it loses a bit of damage when compared to the Copper Solid, now sitting at 85, and it loses a bit of bullet velocity, now sitting at 440. It also does not have any accuracy buffs or debuffs, and suffers a further recoil increase of +10. Just like with the Copper Solid, it has no extra chance of causing a light bleed, and only has a 10% chance of causing a heavy bleed. But this is the round with the highest penetration at 40, meaning that you'll be able to completely penetrate armors from level 1 to 4, making this the most useful round when playing against other players or AI PMCs. With that being said though, you will not be able to penetrate any target using a level 5 or 6 armor. Now that you know the differences between the different variants as well as the different ammos, I will go into a raid and I will actually load up the 50 AE Desert Eagle, in this case the WTS variant, and I will use the different ammos on different targets and kind of show you what you can expect when shooting these targets. First up was the 50 AE GHP. I ran into a scav and I aimed at his thorax/stomach area and ended up firing 4 shots into him before he went down. Now, if I had shot him in the head, I'm pretty sure it would have killed him in one shot. The next round I used was the Hawk JSP, and again, just like with the regular JSP, I ended up shooting him in the stomach/thorax area and used 4 bullets to take him down. I then switched to the AE Copper Solids, found a scav, and ended up shooting him 4 times again in the stomach/thorax area. I then loaded up FMJ, found a scav, but this time I only ended up shooting 2 bullets. My guess would be that I had shot him in the thorax. So, to try and replicate these results, I found another scav and again aimed at his stomach/thorax area, and this time I took 4 bullets again to take down this scav. What that means is that you would use between 2 and 4 bullets to take down unarmored targets. So in conclusion, when considering all of the different parameters that we've discussed now, it would seem that 50 AE is definitely better than 357 Magnum, but still lacks in terms of penetration when compared to PS12B, meaning that 50 AE is a perfect middle ground between the 357 Magnum and 12.7mm. And with that, we've reached the end of the video. In future videos, I will be breaking down the whole new factory rework, as well as where all of the quests are and how to complete them. So if that sounds like anything you would be interested in, please consider subscribing, and if you like this video, please leave a like. Thank you again for everyone who has liked, commented, shared, and subscribed. I really do appreciate you, and I'll see you guys in the next one.